Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're now in our POR working group subgroup meeting for methods for Wednesday, December 8th. Okay, so do we have Stacy here to start this discussion? Perhaps Renee and Brian.
So I'll start just by saying that we have language that provides for a review panel that is modeled after the ECRC, the End of Confinement Review Committee, that sets leveling for people who have been incarcerated for a registrable offense. So that review panel is modeled after the ECRC. It requires a unanimous vote for granting a petition for review to come off of the registry, or for the registrant to be relieved of their registration obligations. It doesn't distinguish on age, as I mentioned in the earlier group. This would be available for all registrants. They would need to, we have criteria set out for what would need to be included, or actually we're working on what would need to be included in the petition. We are working on what the standard is for granting the request for review to be relieved of their registration obligations by looking to other states. And then we are looking at the process for how that review is. We do not have an appellate option in there. We're silent on that. That issue has come up. There'll be no mechanism for someone to appeal a denial of relief from their registration obligations. So that's where we're at. We're still working on the final language for the purposes of the poll. Can you put that poll language up again, Mark?
Very generalized.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's fine. I thought it was a specific question. The one last detail I would say is that if a petition for review is denied, the registrant can come back in 3 years. That's our current proposal right now, to come back in 3. That gets them to 8 years. And those are the material provisions, I would say, and I would turn to Renee or Brian to add where I have missed.
Nothing's coming to mind right now, Stacy. Great job, I think, covering all the main points.
I would just add that if there are questions or concerns about that after 5 years, that is really an incentive. And we were looking at specifically more so probation cases. So commonly they're on probation for 7.5 years, sometimes much, much longer. So if we go to like 10 years, there's no incentive there because it's a 10-year registration. So I would just like to add, if there's any concerns about that, that was the reason why we chose 5. And again, remember, they can apply or submit for a registration review for relief, but it doesn't mean that they'll be granted that. So I just wanted to add that comment.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I had a quick comment on what Renee said. We do believe, we have heard the concerns of Representative O'Neill and others about the unanimous vote. We feel that the 5-year opportunity, if the person is not ready, there's going to be at least one vote that shuts it down. And so I think that really addresses the concerns that particularly Sheriff Heck has raised. which is, we don't want people coming off if there's still a risk. This process allows for, really these folks that maybe it was maybe it's their crime that's gonna, make their petition compelling, in terms of, again, not to diminish any sex crime, but to acknowledge that there's a spectrum, right? And certainly, if it is on a false imprisonment, same set, that might be a really compelling case if it had nothing to do with, a sex crime at all. But we trust that the unanimous vote piece is going to make sure that the most qualified people are getting approved, and that no one's going to slip through the cracks. And though I think Renee, Brian, and I would prefer not to have unanimous vote. I mean, just from our perspective, in terms of we think it's too much. We hear the concerns of O'Neill, Representative O'Neill, and Sheriff Heck, and really wanting to build in a safeguard that this petition will be taken, very seriously, and it will only be those people who are believed to pose very, very little risk of reoffending, and in a situation where the crime or the assailant is unknown, in that sort of stranger case.
Janine.
Thanks. I really appreciate the group working on this. I think it's super challenging. The language as it's written, I know it's not up there again, where it says the considerations are time, compliance, and criminal record. I'm just curious, and yet we're talking, I'm curious why the word risk isn't in there. It's okay if it's not. I've just wondered how you came to that, because you're talking about risk and you're capturing it with those three words of time, compliance, and criminal record. So maybe it's woven in there, or did you think about doing a screener in that group? You're talking about modeling it after the RACN models. So I was just wondering about that. And I would just do a little commercial and caution about the unanimous voting. I totally appreciate the idea and the thinking about it. It's, I think it could bring into some process another challenge. We do majority for other panels, and of course whoever you select for the panel is coming with their voice and from their lane and from their area of expertise. But if you really are looking at this implies risk around future offending for consideration, not everyone there has that expertise and maybe looking through other lenses. And so one no shoots down the spirit of the process from anybody. I'm not singling out any one area of expertise. So I appreciate it. I get it. I hear both sides of that argument. Just throw that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, and something to clarify is that with the polling, it is not to poll on exact language. It's more important to get the essence of the group's position on this. If everybody's opposed to an off-ramp, then no more additional work needs to probably go into that, except on an individual basis. So, Angie.
Well, let's answer my question if I can. Where is the language that we're looking at? The language about this, I don't see the language.
Oh, if you're talking about the actual
The off-ramp,
proposal?
yeah.
Folks are
Yeah, we haven't distributed it yet. We're still working on it. It's a whip.
So what is Janine referring to then?
I think Janine was responding to my comment about the current draft has a unanimous vote, and that though Renee, Brian, and I, as the initial scriveners of this, didn't want that, we decided to put that in to address the concerns of Representative O'Neill and Sheriff Hack, most notably.
So,
I just went over, I just was going over what is in our draft, which is not
okay.
top secret. We just haven't shared it because it's not ready.
Okay, so I thought
Angie-
Janine actually had the draft.
Angie,
Sorry.
I was responding to the yes to the unanimous thing. Thank you, Stacy. Before that, I was responding to the language that Mark had put up, which said considerations for someone to get on the off ramp was time, compliance, and criminal record, which are great.
I thought,
And I was
okay,
responding to the language that was in there. That's all. But I'm too far in the
I
weeds.
thought you were actually looking at language, and I'm like, I haven't seen this
I haven't.
language. So when are we gonna see language, you think? I mean, will we see language in order to?
Soon.
Very soon.
Yes, we're working on it.
Don't you have a little more, do you have a little more time to devote to this, Stace? And then my other question is, and maybe, I guess this will be in the language, but I know we talked about at one point, some of the logistical issues and, what happened, is this going to be a DOC committee? Has any of that stuff been fleshed out? Or are you just doing kind of, this is an idea?
I can respond to
for
that part quick.
process?
We wanted it just to be more of I think, a separate entity, kind of this registration review panel designated by the governor consists of these 5 people, just sort of a separate entity, like I said, not tied to it. I mean, that's our initial piece.
And I want to pull us back to what the purpose of today is. And the purpose of today is to make sure that there's a legitimate question about an off-ramp process, but absolutely the details of that are still going to be worked over in this next month for a report. So even,
Right.
even,
But I mean, to vote on it, okay. I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, you could vote yes or no, should there be a process, but I think really from at least for some people, they want to know more about the specifics. And again, maybe that gets into more than one question, should there be a process for just juvenile? Sure, what, I mean, I don't know. We can talk about that for questions, but some people might be fine with one kind of exit ramp process, but they might think another one's allows too many people to try to get off, or things like that. And another one of the logistical things that I talked about before, and we're trying to work on the questions, but you've got 40,000 people on this registry. How many people are going to qualify right away for that petition process? And I don't know that we even have that information, but is there, from a resource standpoint and a time standpoint, how is that going to happen? Are you going to do it on their anniversary date of the registration? Like, it seems like at least at the beginning, there needs to be some kind of a funnel, or there's going to be chaos, in my view.
And the poll questions won't go out without approval from the chairs, the 3 chairs. So if you don't have enough information to submit a poll question, it doesn't have to go out at that. But I don't think we'll resolve all those issues in a few minutes that we have today. So, but okay.
Okay, I'm done.
Linda.
Hi, I'm driving, so I apologize if you can't really hear me. But, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I would like for us to consider, as we're looking at the makeup of the review board, to make sure that we have some diversity representation on that board.
Thank you, Linda. This is Stacy. That's a good point, and thanks for raising it.
And Katrina.
I 100% agree with Linda in regards to her recommendation. I would also just, from my perspective, really like to see a poll question that's specific to juveniles, and providing them an opportunity to get off the registry prior to becoming an adult, or I can even think of potentially some compromising the age of 18, or upon discharge from probation, whatever comes later, and that would then be able to capture some of those EJJ youth that potentially would be on probation. I just, if we're gonna have this thing, I would at least like a question to at least put that on the table in regards to juveniles.
Okay, Representative O'Neill.
Thank you. So in light of the conversation about the workload, is this, so they're appointed by the governor, a 5-person panel, are they compensated? Is this voluntary? Like, how is this structured? And is this like the PUC commissioners where they're full-time, that's all they do? Or what are you envisioning for this panel as far as the status? Are they employees of now this? I think you said DPS. I'm not even sure who you said would be the agency in charge, but, and compensation. Have you discussed those things?
No.
Let's see.
We have not. Good questions, and we will.
Yeah, I think that knowing that there's 18,000 on the registry, and you could potentially have a flood of people, this could be a full-time job plus, or it could be nothing. It's really hard to know, but one would think there would be a lot of demand for it. So I think all of that is also really important. So thanks for hearing me.
So there's $7.6 billion available for this?
Yeah,
panel,
this is
right,
exciting.
Representative O'Neill?
We're going to tap into that.
Patty,
I was just going to suggest that if you set the criteria as high enough, that'll weed out how many applicants, can even apply and make it more workable.
Renee.
Yeah, and just so the group knows, we did discuss like a first screening criteria, like for instance, remaining free of any criminal activity or criminal conviction. And we talked about right then doing like a criminal history check, which would put them in or put them out. So we did go through like an initial screen prior to it being scheduled before the review panel. If that's helpful.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think we're leaning on the conservative side based on comments Representative O'Neill's made about kind of the legislature's, appetite or ability to willingness to take something on like this. Sheriff Heck has mentioned things. What about kind of the middle of the road people that we're not really sure of? This is really leaning towards on the conservative side. Maybe it's a handful only of people that, a couple of examples I've mentioned in the past that really have done everything they need to do, been in the community, have shown no, or maybe even low risk to begin with, and now have this ability to get off. So I think we want something to move forward and pass. So understanding that we need to set that bar a little bit higher. Some of the discussions we've been having there. So I don't anticipate a flood. I mean, we've done risk reassessments for about 20 years now, guys that are level 3s, level 2s. And I just looked up some numbers. I think it's about 350, 360, something like that, Mark, if you know offhand, over the 20 years that have sought a reassessment of their risk level. Most of them have been lowered. A few have been raised. Some have stayed the same. But it's about 20 a year or so. So that doesn't necessarily translate to the 18,000 we're looking at on the registration, but I don't envision half the 18,000 people suddenly be meeting criteria for something like this. So I want to calm everybody's nerves a little bit like that. I don't think it's going to dry up too significantly.
Yep, and to your comment, Brian, there's quite a list of setup criteria that they need to meet, and all of them.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear that this is probably the most detailed and complicated of the proposals, ideas, so that I expect that people are going to want to see actual detail on this one because of all the questions on it. So Sheriff Heck?
I apologize that this was discussed for those moments I was away, but has there been any thought put into who these 5 members will be? Will it be, will there be requirements that a member be from this discipline or that discipline, or is it purely going to be up to the governor to pick 5 people, whomever he or she wishes?
Stacy?
Sheriff Heck, good question. And there are 5 specific disciplines that we have, all covering the range of folks that we would want to be opining on a petition for review. So that's covered, and again, modeled after the ECRC makeup of the members. The one thing I wanted to say is I think we can get draft language out to, well, I shouldn't commit Renee or Brian, but I think we can, if the goal is a poll in the coming days, I think we can rally the troops and put something together. I guess the caveat would be that, you know, these questions like Representative O'Neill has raised, which are all really good questions. Are they employees? Are they employees of DPS, or who? How are they compensated? That sort of thing. Those details I don't think are going to be in the draft. This is going to be more of the substantive, the substance of how the process plays out. The administrative piece, those are details that, you know, we will also need to work on. But the concept and the policy behind the ramp off is what I think our hope is, that we can create a poll on that. Yes, we, you know, do you support a ramp off? Yes, you know, and then we can drill down a little bit in the questions to see, you know, kind of where the nuances is. Like maybe one of the poll questions is, you know, should the vote be unanimous, or are we shutting out, and are we shutting out, you know, legitimate applicants based on the whim of, you know, someone. So I think that those things that we can drill down a little bit in the substance on the poll, but the idea is the bigger pictures will be asked in the poll, I hope, but we will have something for people to dig their teeth into in order to actually give educated answers.
Okay,
Thank you.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you. Just for my own sake. So Brian, in the ECRC model you talked about, those panel members, what is the structure of that? Who appoints them? Are they employees? Is that their only job? Do they, you know, can you explain just a little bit, since you've modeled it after that?
Appointed by the Commissioner of Corrections. I think it's the chair person, which is usually it's the warden or his or her designee. It's usually a program director, somebody at the program director level in each of the institutions would be the chair. There's a psychologist from our unit that is writes the recommendation, does the file review, scores the actuarial instruments, you know, all the detailed written work, is the psychologist or treatment professional, is the official title. Then we have a victim services representative. Usually that person was a DOC employee. That's still the case, I think, for the most part now. There's a law enforcement representative, so somebody from the local law enforcement agency, usually around each of the prisons. And then a caseworker from the institution, one of the case managers. So none of them are full-time jobs. The committee meets monthly, bi-monthly, and other times as needed with short turnaround cases and things like that. We also have one at our central office location for the reassessment cases I mentioned, federal releases and interstate, under the interstate compact coming to Minnesota. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, but all other main job is other things, and then they're just coming to the meeting as needed.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So you got 11 or 12 or something different panels, since we have 11 different prisons, I'm guessing, and then 12th being headquarters. So this is one singular panel. And so it would be very, I mean, while it's modeled after what you're doing at the ECRC, it's going to be quite different, I think, just in its complexity. And if there's only one panel appointed by the governor, the workload's going to be higher.
And I guess
So we understand that.
in terms of numbers, yeah, I guess we'll have to see how, right now, one panel at each institution, like I mentioned, sometimes the numbers are greater at a certain institution and we'll have bi-monthly meetings, or sometimes certain institutions, they don't have releases within the next couple months that meet our criteria that require ECRC. So it'll be every third month, like at Oak Park Heights or Shakopee or something like that sometimes. So I guess the panel, if suddenly the workload is voluminous, we'll have to look at some of those options. But just I think, like Stacy mentioned, just really the basic process and some of the specific details we'll have to drill down on. But here's sort of the basic makeup. Here's the criteria they need to meet to apply for it, and then what we're looking at as a panel to allow the relief and to vote on that, and what's required of that. Sort of where we're going with it at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Thanks for explaining that, Brian. And it's the process, not so much who's in it necessarily, because again, you've got one per institution, one per prison, and then one at the headquarters, where this would be one singular panel of 5 people. They would hear any and all cases that meet the criteria.
Yeah, and Renee did mention in the chat just now that a sort of a term for each individual person of 2-3 years, again, fine tuning some of the details, but I know at ECRC for the case managers, at least, there's sort of a 2-year time commitment to the outside of your case management job, working at the ECRC2, and then that usually rotates. Another caseworker comes in. Some stay on longer if they like the work, or, so it's kind of how it goes.
So just to that point, real quickly, a staggered appointment is helpful to have some consistency instead of having a brand new panel. Say if it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever that is, it's helpful to have staggered appointment times as well.
Patty.
These are people out in communities, right, who are wanting to be off the registry. So I was wondering if there's wisdom in having some regional panels, because it's different, might have different criteria in greater Minnesota, that it's just different sets of circumstances. And I was just throwing that out there, because it's the whole state. It's not like everybody's in a facility. So it's a thought.
Because we are getting close to the end here, I did want to sort of throw in to this group some of those additional possible polling questions. Some of these have been discussed in lots of detail, some have not. So I'll share this. None of them are critical, but some of you have mentioned them already today. Whoops. And you're fully welcome to ignore them all. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you. I would add to that, asking the legislature to rebuild the database that the BCA uses so that we can extract information out of it, and also to commission a study of the existing data to give us better information that we've been missing.
Does that need to be polled? Or is that kind of a consensus agreement?
I don't know if it's consensus. I know it's something that I've brought up many times, but
Okay. Stacy.
Maybe we do poll it, just so that we can show the legislature that I'm assuming that we would have a super majority that we need more data on certain issues. So that might be a compelling thing for the legislature to hear. The other, and around the data, I think the request for data should be fairly, well, question for Representative O'Neill, how specific does it need to be? One of the things that I've been pounding my fist on the table about, so to speak, has been how many crimes have actually been solved by virtue of the unique information the registry holds on cases involving unknown assailants. That's something that we don't know, and that's the entire premise of the registry. That's the whole reason for the registry. And so if we don't even have data on the very reason for the registry, then that to me is a concern.
So
I guess, so I'll be clear. Representative O'Neill, do you think we need to break down the specific data that should be requested, or is that something and put in the report specific areas, or do we leave it general?
no, you absolutely need to clarify exactly which data you're looking for, because only people that have sat through every single one of these subcommittee meetings would have an understanding as to what that means. And I don't want to have the burden on myself to be the sole reporter back to the legislature what data we're even asking for. No, we absolutely have to spell out what it is we're looking for. And the very data that you want, which is the reason for the creation of the POR, I don't know that if we can do that. I don't know if there's national or state statistics that talk about this crime was solved because we use the data in the POR. I don't know. I mean, maybe the BCA knows if that's even a possibility to do that. I don't know, because you're talking about an interplay of so many different agencies. It's a great question. I just don't know if it can be, if that data can be achieved. But
Yeah.
definitely spell it out.
Okay.
And I don't.
I have ideas on how certain, it may not be perfect data that we get on, is the registry actually being used in the way it was originally intended? It may not be perfect data, but it will be data that certainly shows how the registry is being used in law enforcement agencies. The way it's in my head.
In terms of, I don't know that we know what would or would not be available, because this would all be coming from individual law enforcement agencies, et cetera. So I don't know that we can say what could be compiled, et cetera. I'm sorry that we don't have more guidance on that.
Right, exactly my point. So when we did a survey of just how many untested rape kits we had, that survey had to go out to all law enforcement agencies. And in the metro alone, there are over 100 separate unique law enforcement agencies just in the metro. And you're talking about a monumental feat, I think, to figure out. And I get why you want the question answered. I just don't know how you answer the question. But you know, unless you go by 87 counties and have county attorneys been successful in prosecuting crime based on that, because it does funnel up mostly.
Yeah, my idea was a sample, just to start.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely put it in there, and we can't issue money for a study if we don't know what we're studying. So if you give us parameters, that's much better.
Yeah, and I think the whole point is that all the different viewpoints will be included in this report, including those questions. So that will take compilation of all these discussion points and getting it into, the most important thing is to get it into a readable, organized manner, what those issues were. In addition to those points that there might be consensus on. We don't know quite yet.
What can you just looking at time and thinking about this off ramp and when we need our language tidied up, what is the goal for sending out the polling?
Well, I think the poll, what we wanted to have it for was our next Wednesday meeting with the whole group so that we'd have those results. So if the language and documents behind these poll questions can go out, the goal is tomorrow, so that there are a few days to look at it, review it, and then have the poll done. I guess the poll could be done even on Tuesday in order to get those results available for the working group on Wednesday. Assuming we do get the extension, I suppose we could put that off till December 22nd to get that polling, but that sort of then uses up any extra time we had.
Yeah, and this is super in the weeds on logistics, but I don't know where we're at in requesting an extension. But given my trial schedule and also around the holidays, I would personally beg for an extension.
Yeah, so the idea is that we do have a 2-week extension. I don't see any problem. I brought it up with Senator Ingebrigtsen this morning, just to help coordinate with Senator Limmer in the Senate. That's the response we need. I think if Senator Ingebrigtsen is in support of this extension, which I don't think he has any problem with, that we should be able to get that extension. But I know many of you don't want it extended more than 2 weeks. But it can say, come back in a year and start looking at it with more information. I mean, that can be part of the report. But if there are any action items for this legislative session, 2 weeks is probably as much as we want to extend it. Do you agree, Representative O'Neill?
Yeah, Yeah, so this legislative session starts on January 31st, and it's very quick. And although we've already completed budget, we do have a big budget reserve, so that starts the budget conversations kind of all over again. Typically, this is for policy. This session is typically for policy issues. I can't speak for Representative Mariani, but my inkling would be, and maybe Representative Mueller, if she's still here, could speak more clearly, but I'm going to guess that this is something that Representative Mariani, Chair Mariani, would be very interested in spending a good deal of time to discuss. I think that this probably has a high amount of interest. So I can't speak for the Senate. I don't know what their agenda is and what they're gonna, I can tell you this, they're gonna be less interested in this reform. And they will take, it won't be at the top of their agenda. It might be the mid of the agenda or not on their agenda. It's hard to say, but it's not going to have as much interest in the Senate. So, yeah, it's a very quick session. We have just a couple months to do all of the committee work, and then we'll do floor debate and so on. So if you want anything to happen this session, it's going to have to be wrapped up fairly quickly so that this report can go to those of us that would craft this into a bill. And Representative Mueller and I probably will be the ones doing that, I'm guessing. Not sure if Senator Ingebrigtsen has interest to be in the drafting process of the bill, but typically she and I work on that. And then we hand our finished product off to a senator is typically what happens. So we would need time to properly draft this into a bill, or maybe even a couple different bills. So that's where we're at.
Okay, we're just about done with time here. Do we have any visitors here that wanted to make any statements, questions? Okay. Anything else? Olivia, did you have anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. So Angie, Stacy, and Sheriff Heck, there'll probably have to be a get together on these polling questions, kind of the revisions we've talked about. I can put together some of those possibilities and get them to you for your review and revision. And we can go from there. But the important thing is to, we'll also have that background material on the polling questions available as soon as possible to all the members. Any other questions? Statements? Okay. Thank you for your time today. Most of you have been here the whole time.
Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, I'm not going to delay things too much. I just wanted to really thank Brian and Renee and Stacy for all of their work, because I know that that particular group required a lot of extra time and effort. So, or the subgroup or whatever. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. And I think Stacy's already gone, but we'll let her know your sentiments.
I'll see her, Brian. Don't
All right.
worry.
Yeah, that's true. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you later.